All right, great. I'm glad to have the Answer Man here. All right. The Answer Man is someone I've been following. All right. He's very humorous. Also, there's a lot of messages in what he's saying. Please subscribe to the Answer Man. All right. He has an awesome channel and can use support.
Yeah.
So again, Answer Man, tell me where do you come from? Because we have a similar accent.
I'm from New York my whole life, from the New York area. I was born in Westchester, New York. I lived in northern Jersey when I went to school. I went to Parsons School of Design in Manhattan in the 80s. Then I lived in Brooklyn for a little while, lived in Manhattan for a little while, and now I'm in Jersey City.
We must be near the same age.
Yeah, I think so.
I was graduated high school in 1981.
Yeah, I was 82.
Oh, okay. So I'm a year older than you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So your channel.
Yeah.
Why did you get into it? Like what caused you to start your channel?
Okay, so there's a little history here. So back in the 1990s, I did stand-up for a while. And it was a lot of fun for me. I mean, I went to art school to learn design, but when I didn't have a lot of work, I would get frustrated. So I started doing stand-up, and I ended up being pretty good at it. And I wasn't like professional level, but I ended up being a regular at the Improv in the city for a couple of years. And I got to meet some really funny people and learn a lot. And one thing I learned was, if you could do anything else, don't be a comedian. Like if you got any chance to make a living doing anything else, do that. So it was fun to do for a while, but then I stopped and I pursued my career as a designer, and I did pretty good at that. And I got married, and that all just that became my life. And then there was around the late 1990s, early 2000s, I was getting bored, and I found out when I was living in Manhattan that you could have a cable access channel. You could have a show on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And so I came up with this concept of Answer Man, where I would have people email me questions throughout the month. And then once a month, I would do a half-hour special where I would just come up with the most ridiculous answers to the most ridiculous questions. And it was just a bit of fun, And I did that for a couple of years until like 9/11 happened. And then I moved to Brooklyn, and then I wasn't part of Manhattan Neighborhood Network anymore. So that kind of stopped. And then I just kept pursuing my career. And then as I got older, work started to dwindle, and I have a lot more free time now. So I thought maybe I'll bring Answer Man back. I found my glasses. These are like 30 years old. I found these, and I thought, let's do a YouTube channel. So I just started making ridiculous videos, and I thought naively that people would send me questions through through the text, the messages, and no one did. I mean, no one was watching my channel. Yeah. I didn't know anything about promotion or anything like that. So then I started doing shorts because I figured I could get people to watch with a short. So I started doing shorts. And I got pretty good reactions. And then I did one about is God male or female? And I did this, and I had this character that responds to me, and I have this like debate with, and that got like 10,000 views or something. So I thought, oh, well, that was cool. And then the more I would do with religion, the more reactions I would get, and the more views I would get. So eventually, I just sort of like evolved the channel into like not that I have an issue with religious people, but I do have an issue with fundamentalist religious people that are just their brains are checked out, and they believe in creationism, and I do have an issue with that, and I think that that needs to be addressed, especially today. So that's kind of what my channel turned into. It turned into a channel that kind of exposes the absurdity of religious fundamentalism with humor. And that's kind of where I am now. So we'll see if I could keep that going, if I could build it up. I mean, I got like 1,300 subscribers, but I don't have enough videos yet. I'm not monetized. I'm not making any money with it, but maybe in time I will. We'll see how it goes.
Well, I think you will. YouTube is definitely not easy because it's difficult to find an audience. I know I'm struggling, but I'm, by no means a professional at all.
Well,
but it's definitely not easy to do. But you're on your way. I mean, I've been watching your videos, and I think you're like Larry David. The guy. I used to watch his show, and I thought he was hilarious.
A funny thing about Larry David is when he was at the Improv just before I had started there, and he was like kind of legendary there because he had no tolerance for the crowd. Because when you're at the Improv, you're getting like a crowd from out of town. You're not getting like New Yorkers. You're getting people from Kansas and all different, like tourists. And they're not necessarily the most hip crowd, And Larry David was famous for going up on stage to do his set and then looking at the crowd and just going, nope, and putting the mic back in the stand and leaving through the emergency exit on the stage.
Yeah, he cracks me up.
Yeah.
I guess that's called a dry sense of humor. I don't know. I just think he's just a hilarious character,
Yeah. And I try to be that. I mean, my videos now, I'm doing that one where I'm like a really bad apologist, and I'm just being ridiculous and loud and obnoxious and just so that it's more attitude than it is jokes.
Yeah. I saw. I think your last one like that.
Yeah.
I like the ones where you were with a wig. I'm
doing another one. Yeah, those take a while to.
This is on the couch.
I do. God on the couch, where I'm God's therapist. And I'm talking to God, trying to make sense of like what trying to get him to understand that he's not making sense to a lot of people, and that he's doing ridiculous things, and that he's omniscient and should know better, and so I try to talk him through a lot of stuff. So I got about 6 videos with that. I got one where I'm talking to Jesus because he's got trauma from the crucifixion. So I'm trying to help him with that. And he doesn't understand why his dad made him do that, and they're having trouble. Then I have one where I've got the whole Trinity in group therapy because they're not getting along anymore. So I kind of play with that idea. And then I do Jesus in different videos. I have him debunking Professor Dave, or trying to, but then becoming, realizing that he's wrong and creation isn't real and that evolution is true. And then he has this sort of existential crisis at the end of the video. So I'm just having fun with it. So I got another one that I'm working on now. Hopefully it'll come out later in the week, where he debates Satan about evolution and creation.
Very, very nice. Well, that's going to be a funny
crossfire.
Yeah. Well, very, very funny stuff.
Thanks.
I want to ask you seriously, like, do you have a religious background, or were you always like
not
in fact, religious?
No, I actually have a video on my site about my deconstruction. So I was, born and raised in an Italian community, so I was Roman Catholic growing up, and I went to Catholic school. So there was a lot of religious influence growing up, but not fundamentalist. Like we never talked about the Old Testament. They just pretend, like Catholics just pretend it doesn't exist, like God didn't do any of that stuff, and they just concentrate on like Paul's letters, and basically it's like Paul's teaching about Jesus is what they stress, and so I never had like an issue with evolution or anything like that. I just had crazy nuns that would smack you for no reason and make you, like corporal punishment. Somebody would do something, they didn't know who would do it, so they punished the entire class. It was that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was my trauma growing up. I remember one time they decided that they would let the whole school have lunch together in a big community, kind of, so that everybody could be friends with everybody. But the one rule was no talking during lunch. so it was insanity, growing up there.
Yeah.
But
did you go to catechism I was Catholic when I was young. My mom and dad were Catholic. I got more into the radical fundamentalism later. But in the beginning, I was Catholic, and I went through the first communion and the
you do. Yeah, you have to do that. I remember we had to rehearse. Like we had to go into church as little kids and then rehearse how you're going to stand in line and walk and then take the host. And they would give us like a host that wasn't blessed yet so we could get used to how nasty it's
It hadn't turned into Christ yet.
It hadn't turned into Christ. It was still just the cracker at that point. And then you'd have to like go back down the aisle, and because you have to teach kids how to walk apparently, and then they'll learn how to get back to their seat and sit where they were originally sitting. So I remember that whole process, and then there was what is that when you I don't even remember the word now. Confirmation, when you have to take on a new middle name and.
Yes, I remember that now. Yep.
So I took on a new middle name and I was confirmed. And then I remember they did this one thing where they had like 2 red candles and they would tie them together and make like an X out of them. And then they would bless your throat. Did you ever do that?
No. My throat was never blessed.
I never understood what that was. And then I found out that there's this saint that stops people from choking on fish bones. So on his anniversary of, I don't know, his birth or his I don't know if he's martyred, they bless your throat with a candle so you don't choke on. I guess it works for chicken too. I don't know. I didn't ask.
Very realistic stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, when you start asking, like, see. I didn't have I believed that, in Jesus growing up, and it wasn't a problem for me until I went to college. And then I met people from other parts of the country that thought that like the Old Testament was true. And then I thought, wow, this is nuts, and then I heard about the creationists and how they're trying to like teach creationism in high school and all. And that's when I thought, okay, this is a problem. And ironically, the more I studied the Bible, the more I realized it was nonsense. And that's when I actually became an atheist, is when I just thought, okay, none of this makes sense. The idea that Adam and Eve sinned and then God came down as Jesus to kill himself so that he could forgive us. There's just no logic there. It's like, that's a crazy God right there. That's a God that doesn't know what he's doing, clearly.
Well, I'm really happy that you realize that. Because a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
It amazes me. Like I love finding humor in these things because
there's a lot available too.
It's so crazy and preposterous, this stuff.
Yeah, it's ripe with with humor. I mean, there's so much to pick and choose from. I mean, it doesn't get old. I'll be doing this for a while if it catches on.
Yeah, for sure. But apparently, you never went through the radical Christianity thing, like you were sold out and all that.
No, I never. No, I never like feared hell or.
Yeah.
And I understand that's like a big part of fundamentalist Christianity is they really fear hell, and it makes them paranoid and gullible. For any preacher or politician that's trying to appeal to them in that way, and it makes them really hard to rationalize with and to reason with because they don't trust anybody. They don't trust that anyone's telling them the truth. They gave their brain to Christ. So,
they checked out.
Yeah,
that's what I call it.
So
I was checked out for a while for many years, and
where were you when you became a fundamentalist? Did you move away from New York?
No, I became a fundamentalist in New York, probably aged 25 to 28.
Interesting.
and you know, I went through that whole born again experience, and you know, making a vow. You know, you're gonna follow Jesus no matter where he leads you, and it. You know, I look back on it, and of course, I'm like, you know, what was I thinking, right? You know, what the world was I thinking? But I guess it's persuasive at certain points in a person's life, and certain people, you know, giving them the hope, you know. Right. I was kind of having, I was young, but I was having difficulty in my first marriage, and having my ex have some health problems, going to a fundamentalist meeting group, and they were talking in tongues, and you know how in the world I ended up believing this. Looking back, I don't know, but it took me away for at least 20 years.
Really?
You know, in that crazy, you know, thought process where you think everything is about God, you know.
Right, I mean, right. It's got to be it's a strange place to be. You're trying to rationalize all this stuff with a loving God, and you're like, how does this fit? You know, how does it?
Oh, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you get up in the morning. Well, what does the Lord have for me today? You know. But I'm glad I got out, and I'm, you know, on YouTube just to try to get the atheist voice that I have out there. After the election, I felt a need to speak not necessarily about politics, but just a worldview that's different than what a lot of people in America are following, which is a fundamentalist Christian nationalist type of.
And it makes you bad at thinking. You know, you can't reason anymore when you become when you believe that the Bible is this inherent literal word of God. And it never occurs to you that it can't be because of all the contradictions and all the crazy, you know, the crazy ways that God behaves. And you're trying to always rationalize this stuff. And it's got to make you just like a bad thinker in general. I mean, it's got to open you up to all this kind of political nonsense. And I mean, you know, what I always found odd was that more evangelical Christians support Trump than did George W. Bush, who was an evangelical Christian.
Yes.
You know, and man, that's scary and
that's
crazy.
Very scary. That's why I jumped on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't even, I've been an atheist for probably 10, 12 years, so it's not like new to me. I haven't believed in the sky daddy, you know, the God in the sky thing in quite a while.
Right.
But it amazed me that the people that I used to know and the people I used to respect were thinking that Trump was a man of God, you know. I was like,
grab him by, you know, that's what God would do. What would Jesus do? He'd grab him by, you know.
So, is there any particular Bible stories that you find preposterous?
Well, I just learned about this one in Numbers. I don't know if you're familiar with the test for an unfaithful wife.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I just learned about that. I'm like, that's God performing abortions. You know, why don't evangelicals know about this? Why, you know, they're so pro-life, and here they got God like causing miscarriages to unfaithful women on, you know, by making them drink basically poison.
Yeah.
It's insane. I never knew that was in the Bible.
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff.
Oh, I know now.
once you get into it, and there's the test for virginity, which is a bloody sheet in I think Deuteronomy.
Okay.
And that's just an awful story because it actually 50% of women do not bleed, you know, when they
get stoned to death.
Not a virgin. So God, you know, had a lot of people stoned, a lot of women stoned because that was the test they used.
I'm going to have to talk to them about that in my next Dad on the Couch video.
I mean, it's so primitive, and then I was talking to a Christian apologist one day, because I do, I will debate Christians for fun, and he was from Armenia, real nice guy, and he said in Armenia they still use that test. There's areas where they still use this. Wow. They roll out a sheet and they go, well, you were a virgin or weren't a virgin when you got married. So I was like, they still do that in a modern era.
What happens if there's no blood? What do they do to the woman? Do they?
Well, if there's no blood, biblically they stone her to death.
I know they're not doing that though, are they?
No, I hope not. But they're still using it as a test, which is unbelievable. I mean, you can't go to a doctor or anything else. You gotta use this barbaric old ancient ritual.
Yeah, and they don't have any tests for a man.
No. Well, if you do get into the Bible, you probably notice men get a break.
Yeah, they get. Yeah, they basically control everything all the time.
Yeah, we get a break. That was one of the things that made it easy for me to stay in, I think, because you could always turn to a woman or your wife and say, well, says here. You ought to do what I say.
Let's go to the instruction manual. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It makes it convenient,
Yeah.
But I'm
glad you came out of it. That's
my goodness. Gosh, I'm so much more free. I'm happier.
There you go.
I actually think I'm a better person.
That's very common.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it's a crazy world of religion, and
it is.
And I like that you're out there representing, rational thought and putting a little funny twist on it. Yeah,
and I don't want to be kind of like a militant atheist that's like there is no God, and even though I am an atheist, but I'm fine with people that are spiritual, that are religious, but as long as they're not crazy, as long as they're not oppressing people or using dogma to mess with people and to ruin their lives and other people's lives, which is what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I came on YouTube, and I'm meeting new people like yourself that are putting a different message out there.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
I do too.
Because not that any one of us can make a difference by ourselves, We
can just add to the conversation.
Yes, and over time, I kind of think that it does make a difference. Yeah. Even one or two people at a time. It's like you don't watch a video and instantly change your mind.
No.
But you can watch videos, and little by little you have a thought and you go, well, maybe there was something there that I didn't consider,
Something to click. It's a process, right? I mean, most people that I've dealt with that have converted, that have deconverted, do it over time. Like even myself. I mean, I believed. I don't know exactly what I believed about Jesus. I don't know why he died I know he died for our sins, but I never really thought about like why and how that worked. But I always thought like, well, he was a really cool guy. He was a really, and so I kind of believed in this vague sort of way. Right. It's early.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's early. But I was reading a story in the Bible the other day, because my girlfriend from Colombia is actually a Christian.
Oh, still.
But she's been her whole life. She's one of those cultural things,
Yeah. There you go.
Like my mom and dad were Christian. I'm going to be a Christian.
Right. And you don't want to be out, cast aside as like some freak.
She doesn't read the Bible, but she did one night start reading the Bible in Genesis, and the story of Lot and his wife, and Lot's wife being turned into a pillar of salt.
Right.
When, I don't know if you know the story, she turned around
She looked.
And she did the horrible thing of turning around.
Yeah,
and
unforgivable.
She was turned into a pillar of salt.
Right.
So there we were talking about it, and she's like, "What? She was turned into salt." I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, well, what do you think that looked like? Did God make her shapely and sexy, or did he make like a statue out of her?
Like a crystallized statue is how I always pictured it.
Yeah. So these are things that just they make me laugh.
Yeah. Well, look at what he did to Job, right? I mean, on a bet with Satan, he kills the guy's kids. He just to prove that he wouldn't stop being faithful to him.
Yes.
I mean, what a horrible story.
It's so horrible to think that people believe this to be true,
and they're fine with it. That's the thing. It's like. And this is more like like the whole idea of like a blood sacrifice, like a deity that like won't forgive unless you bleed. That's more like what Satan might do. That doesn't sound like a loving God's.
No.
Blood sacrifice sounds more like something demonic, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like something divine.
It's horrifying, and it's for me disgusting, like the story of Job. I mean, which is humorous when you understand it's mythology and not real.
Yeah.
But people who actually believe it, I mean, there's this God who knows the outcome. He's supposed to know the past and the future.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But he already knows what's going to happen. But he's like, well, I'll just make a bet and see what happens.
Yeah. Like, I love that. Like, he can't stand humanity anymore. So he decides to flood the entire planet, kill everybody except this guy and his kids and their spouses. And then they sin like immediately after the flood. It's like, didn't he know that? Did he not look ahead? Like, and then he promises never to do a catastrophe like that again. But then he's also promising the end of the world. It's like annihilation. So it's like, there's no consistent logic here. And you've got a God that's omniscient who keeps forgetting that he's omniscient.
I know. I want to one day put together a video called God's Ineptitude.
Yeah.
Like just he's very inept if you read the narrative,
right?
Without being conditioned to believe in the religion. I mean, he's inept. He's always like, it's almost like he's a buffoon. He's an
all-powerful moron, is what he is.
Yes, moronic. He's moronic.
Yeah. Which when you think about that, and then think about why evangelicals love Trump. There's an all-powerful moron.
Yes, and I think now, being out so long, that Christians are vulnerable to believing almost anything. Like I would think that they're very vulnerable to falling for scams.
They do all the time.
Like they don't really think critically at all. It's just like somebody said something. Oh, I believe it.
Right. Well, I don't know if you ever saw or listened to one of the earlier ones I made about Abraham. About was he the dumbest prophet? Because it's all about God. So the premise in my audio ones is that God is actually this loving, good God, but all of his prophets are idiots and they get everything wrong. And he's trying to teach Abraham how to think critically, but Abraham doesn't get it. And like God's like, so the test was, I'm going to tell him to kill his kid. And if he doesn't, and then Abraham's supposed to go, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. But Abraham just goes, yeah, sure. Okay. As long as you say so. And so they get in this argument, where he's trying to explain how stupid that is. And Abraham just doesn't get it. And so there's that other aspect of like, the people that follow this God aren't very bright. You can't be very thoughtful.
Yeah. I just think they make a vow. I mean, I remember myself, you make a vow and you make a leap of faith.
Right.
Where it's like, I'm just going to, no matter what I have to do, I'm going to figure out a way to justify this because this becomes my foundation, my identity.
Yeah. So they mentally check out. And then, but here's the thing, right? Didn't Jesus say that there were going to be false prophets, right? He warned them that there's going to be false prophets. So how would you know that there's false prophets without the ability to think critically, you know? And then when Thomas doubts that Jesus came back to life, Jesus gets mad at him. And he goes, blessed are those who believe without needing, you know. It's like, well, wait a minute. You said there were going to be false prophets. And now they're saying, oh, Jesus came back to life. I just want to see for myself, you know.
Right. And it
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's just toodaloo, insanity.
There's no consistent logic from cover to cover.
I know. So you don't do YouTube as a full-time venture, right?
No. It's that's another thing. It's like I have a full-time, well, not a full-time. I do, I work from home. So I do have a lot of free time and work is, as I'm getting older, I'm getting less and less work for some reason, or it's just, I don't know, it just happens. So it's kind of just a creative outlet for me to keep doing something to keep myself busy, and I enjoy it. And I'm learning how to use Adobe Premiere as a consequence of this. So I actually ended up getting a job doing some Premiere work as a result. So it actually paid off in that way. You know,
is Adobe Premiere expensive, or is it something you get?
When you Adobe now, you need to have a subscription to Adobe. You buy different subscription packages. So the package I have that includes, you know, Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that for publishing also includes After Effects and Premiere. And so it's all part of the package. So I was only using Photoshop and Illustrator and I think InDesign for years. And I'm like, but I have access to like After Effects and Premiere, and I'm not using them. So I thought, well, maybe, you know, if I start doing YouTube videos, I'll teach myself how to do this too. And I'll just, you know, I'll make videos with that and learn, you know, have fun learning. So that's what I'm doing with it now. So yeah, if you have a subscription, depending on which one you get, you'll have access to that.
Like, may I ask how much a month something like that runs?
Well, I think it's like $250 a year. It's an annual.
So maybe $15, $20 a month or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's better
annually,
monthly than in one shot, I guess.
Well, they make you pay for a year, so it's an annual rate.
Oh, okay. So you have to pay in one shot.
Yeah.
You know, coming from New York, you know, there's probably a way that you could get that for free, you know, if you know a guy who knows a guy.
Yeah, there's cracked versions. Yeah.
But hey, I want to tell you that I appreciate your work.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
I appreciate that you appreciate.
I want you to stay in the game. You know, I'm going to stay in it regardless, because it's my only outlet to express, you know, my atheism in a world of Trumpism.
Right.
So I'm going to stay in there. All right. Love your content. Anyone who follows me, please go and subscribe to the Answerman.
I would appreciate that.
Yes, and I'm going to put your link in the video. So if anyone follows me, I hope they jump on your stuff.
Well, thank you very much.
Right, and I appreciate you coming on. It means a lot to me. And,
sure, man. Do it again.
Keep going. Keep being funny. Keep that New York thing going.
Yeah. Can't help it. Couldn't if I tried, man. Couldn't stop it if I tried.
Yeah.
It's just who I am.
We'll end it here, and I'm going to continue to follow you, and I thank you, Answerman.
Cool. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, my
All right,
friend.
man. Take care. Bye-bye.